Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. If I could ask everybody in the back, at least for now, to come up front and sit down. And there'll be more time for side conversations, but we want to start all together. Sylvester and Tiffany, you're not listening. Come on up front. Let's all sit down together. And there'll be lots of time tonight for discussion, but I just want to make sure we all start together. So, good evening. My name is Steve, or altogether Steve Rasmussen-Kansian, and I'm your facilitator tonight for the supplemental information meeting. Before we go any further, I want to introduce our interpreters and give them a chance to double check that nobody else needs interpretation equipment.
Hello, nhân dân Colombia ya lo có yêu mong trả lời ya tên nên lên thì sao tao trả lời nó là thằng này làm gì cũng đã lúc trong đó nó ở trong đó.
Muy buenas noches a todos. Si alguien solicita traducción, si tenemos aparatos disponibles para poder proveerla. Good evening to everyone. If anybody who requires Spanish or Hmong translation, we do have devices available to facilitate.
Great. Thank you very much. So tonight is the supplemental information meeting, the meeting that was called for by the steering committee voters. The goal of the meeting is to answer any and all questions that weren't completely answered at Steering Committee 4, and also to provide any additional information that's now available in anticipation of Steering Committee Meeting 5 on Wednesday. Just to be clear, because this meeting's also open to new folks who weren't at Steering Committee 4 last Wednesday, this isn't a Steering Committee meeting, and there won't be any voting or deliberation going on tonight. Importantly, it is a supplemental information meeting, so we'll have plenty of time to answer all questions and also for members and participants to speak to each other. It's all in anticipation of the 5th Steering Committee meeting, which is this Wednesday night at 5 o'clock at the Westside Church of God, and everybody, Steering Committee members and not, are very welcome to come to that meeting. So our agenda tonight is intentionally very focused. First, Danielle will have a presentation to make sure that everybody has all the supplemental information that exists and knows where to find more information that they might want to have in order to make their decision if you're a voting member. Importantly and excitingly, some of that information includes the alternatives that have been developed from the 17 maps across the back of the room. So they were just finished hours ago, and they'll be shared with everyone tonight so people can start contemplating them and sharing them and preparing for the meeting on Wednesday. Then the majority of the meeting will be reserved to have discussion, to ask questions, to answer questions, and importantly, since we're now moving into the deliberation stage, on the alternatives, for members to start speaking to each other, and for members of the public who aren't members of the steering committee to speak to the steering committee members, because the process going forward is no longer about anyone within the city or SGC making a decision. The next decision to make is for the steering committee. So we welcome comments during the discussion period to the voting members, because they're now the audience that needs to hear what people think about the different alternatives in preparation for the vote. We'll also make sure to have plenty of time at the end before our normal 7:30 close to go back and look at the maps, and soon there will also be maps of the alternatives up on the back wall, and all of us on staff will be staying around to answer any additional questions. Really, our goal is to make sure any question that could be asked and answered tonight can be, so that when we get to Wednesday, nobody feels like there isn't enough time to consider everything. So all questions are welcome. Any question about the alternatives is good to share. Any comments, good to share. So hopefully we can get to Wednesday and feel like, as the group of voters, have plenty of time to make their consideration before voting. So without further ado, then I want to introduce Danielle to share the additional information and review the questions and answers that came up at the last meeting.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all again. I'm sorry I missed last week. All right, let's dive right in, because we want to make sure that we have a lot of time tonight to get through a lot of questions, make sure that everyone really understands the alternatives that have been put together. My clicker, what do I point it at? Not a tech person. On is helpful. Nope. I may help. Yeah, let's do that. There we go. Okay. Here is our website. All of the supplemental information that was provided is up on our website. This is the front page of our website. As you look at the top, and I realize the font's relatively small, there's 4 tabs: Home, Process, Project Development, and Contact. All of the main documents that you need to find in order to get more questions answered are mostly going to be in the Process or the Project Development tabs. The website address, of course, up above is transformfresno.com. So if you look at the process page, we have a link to our frequently asked questions. A lot of questions came out of last Wednesday's meeting, and our team has put together an FAQ document. You can see the link in the first paragraph on that page. That's where you can locate that document if you have any more questions. This is what the document looks like. If you just click on that link in the website, it opens right up to the FAQs, and you can learn more about a lot of the questions that came up last week. All right. We also created a series of documents to answer some of the questions that came up around differences in projects between Project Review Day, between the 4th Steering Committee meeting, what was on the website. So all of the one-page info sheets on each project that you got last Wednesday are up on the website with a cover page. We also have posted actually that's on a different page. Under Project Development, we have at the very bottom of the page a crosswalk that walks you through where you can find each project in each of the different places that we have projects. We also have an info sheet that has all of the housing projects. There's 10 that moved forward with more detail on affordability levels, how many units they're building, et cetera. So you have more information about the housing projects there. Okay. So I'm going to now walk you all through our process of how we came to alternatives. And walk you step by step through that. So there's, as you can see on the back wall, there's 17 maps. There were 17 small groups that came together last Wednesday with about 230, 240, I can't remember the final number. People at that last meeting, every group made a map and then documented the projects that came together in that map. What we did is we took all the maps, we took all the lists, we took all the sheets that you filled out, we documented them all, we put them in a spreadsheet, and then we counted what projects surfaced to the top, which groups picked which projects the most, which ones were the most popular. We then created a ranking of all the projects in their frequency by appearance, and then went from that ranking. Okay. So then, as we've been saying throughout all of the meetings, we've been saying we would do 3 to 5 scenarios. What our approach to creating scenarios, we wanted to really ground it in the feedback and the scenarios that you all created last Wednesday. We didn't want to bring 17 different scenarios in front of you. We wanted to have a shorter amount of options, but that also very much reflected the work that you all put into the meeting last Wednesday. So our approach was generally this. There's 4 packages that are the alternatives. Each package has some consistent themes in every single one. So every package, about 50% of the funding in that package, so it's about 36 million total, is based on the most popular projects. So the projects that were consistently in many, many, many groups. We had 11 projects that fit into that category of about half of the funding. And so those are in every single package that you see in front of you. For the rest of the alternatives, every package also has projects that make sure that they meet the guidelines. And so as we've been discussing at a lot of our previous steering committee meetings, the state funding guidelines in transformative climate communities have a lot of requirements around projects near high-speed rail, around readiness, around, well, those are the main ones, essentially. So we made sure that every package meets the state guidelines. And then finally, the strategy piece, that's really the differentiating piece of each package. And so every package has a different strategy, and I'll talk you through a little bit more. A lot of those are grounded in the local criteria, which I forgot to mention is also on our website, the fact sheet on that. And so each goes through a different variation of the priorities that we've heard articulated through this group. Okay, let's start going through the packages. Oh, my bad. One more thing. So we have 4 scenarios. Our first one that I'll walk you through is really a focus on priority projects. What people wanted to see based on the number of times it was mentioned in a group. So like I said, we have that every package has that half that's based on the projects that have a lot of frequency in every group. And then the first scenario, after meeting all the state's requirements, it just keeps going down the list. We're going to make this the package that really, really represents in the best way that we can the feedback that came back from this group last Wednesday. So that's scenario 1. Second scenario is based on one of the local priorities that we've heard really often, which is that people want to maximize affordable housing through this process, maximize the creation of affordable housing. So we have 2 scenarios that focus on affordable housing. One of them is more focused on just total units. How many new affordable housing units can we get? How many new housing units can we get total? How can we get as much housing done through this funding as possible? So that's number 2. Number 3, with a slight twist, number 3 is focused more on new affordable housing units. There's one project that you all may be familiar with. It's a rehabilitation project. So that one is included in the second package. The third one doesn't include it. So that's the difference between those 2. Okay, the fourth and final package is focused on urban greening. And this is another key priority that we heard from the local criteria conversations, that folks really want to see an emphasis on parks, on the open space, making sure that that's throughout. So the fourth package includes all of the urban greening projects. Every single project that had an urban greening component to it is included in that fourth package. And that's really the thing that sets that project apart. Now, we know that a lot of folks are in our local criteria discussion. We know that local hire and the jobs in the economy was the most commonly repeated criteria that surfaced through that discussion. We have a project labor agreement with a local hire piece that covers that. And so every package has a lot of different aspects that will be in compliance with that project labor agreement and the local hire requirements. Can we hold that to the end? Thank you. So one more thing to mention before I jump right in. So we've been saying that, we've been talking about building projects to get to a package of 70 million. What you're going to see are alternatives that are about in the $77 million range. It's very intentional. It's because we needed to build a contingency because projects iterate over time. We have been working to get the most accurate information as possible from a lot of our project proposers. But just like with any major construction project, you need a 10% contingency, more or less. And so we've built in a 10% contingency into each package, knowing that some of the projects still need more for clarification from the state as they start submitting more detailed budgets. We learned there's elements that can be funded with TCC, they can't be funded. So we wanted to include some room for that contingency. What you'll see though is we haven't included any alternate projects. What we've done is we've just created a package that adds up to 77, knowing that projects aren't gonna fall out of the package as things get moved around. They just might get scaled down because of the way that the state wants to implement the program. Okay, so here's the list of frequency. It's ordered by just their project ID number. For those of you who are curious, who's curious about the top ranked project? I think most people are. It's Fresno City College. Is that any surprise? No. So there's our frequency. All right, so let's walk through the alternatives. So here's number 1. This is the scenario based on the favorite projects. It's about 77 million. The top priorities, you see that's the consistent theme. Every package has that series of projects. So we've got Fresno City College. The TCC connector project, which is the fax service, that's a match project. The MLK Activity Center street improvement, that's also a match project. Oh, yes, we do. Where are the people that can hand things out? Thank you, Lisa. We will do that. Let me pause while that happens.
Yeah, just give it a second so everybody gets it.
Can you go back to the frequency slide? That's not
It's not in the packet. Does everyone have a handout? Okay, great. Let's move forward. Okay. So again, I'm going through the projects that are in every single package. So everyone has, I think I left off at MLK Activity Center street improvements. That's a match project. It's in every package. Chinatown Active Transportation Project. That was one of our top vote getters. EOC Partnership for Energy Savings. MLK Activity Center Park, the Voice Gladiator Program, the Clean Shared Mobility Network, that was the car share collaborative that came forward. Clean Energy Park and Play, the Urban Greening and Playground, that's the toddler playground that people know colloquially. Chinatown P-Bid, that's another match-only project that the city is providing the match for. It's one of the projects they're supporting. And then finally, in the top priorities from the September 27th, we have the solar-powered charging station in Vanpool at the Clean Energy Park. So those are, as I'll say again, those are all the projects that are in every single package, that top section. The second section are the projects that meet the high-speed rail requirements. So we have Mariposa Plaza, which is the top vote-getter project for open space or parks near the high-speed rail station. And then we have the high-speed rail station area complete streets connectivity project, also near high-speed rail. And then the Chinatown mixed-use housing project also meets the requirements. And then finally, under strategic focus, those are the last projects that are in this bin. And these are, just going back to the strategy on this one, these are projects we just kept going down the list. So the projects at the top that you see, those are the top priorities. And after we met the high-speed rail requirements, we just kept going down and picking the ones that were the most favored by the steering committee at our last meeting. So we have the West Fresno Magnet Core Workforce Housing Project in there, Annadale Mode Shift Project, that's the Complete Streets Project near Annadale, Changing Lives with Trees in Southwest Fresno, the Food Commons Food Hub in West Fresno, and then you have the Another Level Training Academy Community Garden. So that's scenario one. There's a map that shows what it looks like. I think our maps are coming right off the presses. They literally just got printed and they are going up on the wall so everyone can look at them soon. We've got some fast mappers. Okay, so let's start on number two. Number two is, as you remember, we have two scenarios focused on housing. So this is the one that maximizes for just total number of housing units. We're just trying to build as much housing as we can with this funding. So again, the top tier of projects, that's the tier that's in every single package. Second tier, the high-speed rail. Again, we have Mariposa Plaza, the high-speed rail complete streets connectivity, and Chinatown mixed use, meeting those requirements. And then to just maximize our housing, number of housing units we're building, there's the park at South Fulton, Hotel Fresno, and then Kingsview Manor Acquisition and Rehabilitation Project in West Fresno. You'll see where it says next to the park and Hotel Fresno, subject to state confirmation. We found out late this afternoon that those projects may need additional review by the California Air Resources Board. So those have, we need to go through some additional verification for those two projects in particular. They have some matching funding sources that may conflict with transformative climate communities. Okay. Here's a map of scenario 2. Scenario 3. So this is the other, to the map. Okay. So scenario 3, this is the other housing scenario. Again, top tier of projects, those are the ones that are in every scenario. They're the top vote-getting projects, or not vote, but they were the consensus projects that came out of the last discussion. The high-speed rail station requirements, we have Mariposa Plaza again, high-speed rail station area, complete streets connectivity, and then the park at South Fulton, again with that same caveat. The strategic focus, in order to get as much housing as possible, then we also have Project 9, which is the West Fresno core workforce housing project, and then Hotel Fresno in this one as well. And here's the map of scenario 3. All right, scenario 4, last scenario. This is the scenario that focuses on urban greening. Again, top tier, it's in every package, the top consensus projects. High-speed rail projects, Mariposa Plaza, high-speed rail station area, complete streets, the park at South Fulton. And then when focus on the strategic focus, this is where we include all of the urban greening projects. So changing lives with trees in Southwest Fresno, the Food Commons Food Hub, Chinatown Urban Greening Project, the Yosemite Village Community Garden, Southwest Fresno Green Trails Project, the Another Level Training Academy Community Garden, the Santa Clara Community Garden, and Chinatown Park. So, and here's the map of the 4th scenario. I believe the maps are all up on the wall back there. I guess they are. They're on your right side. With that, I think that concludes my presentation.
So Danielle's going to stay up here with me, and Laura's going to come up too. So Laura, Danielle, and I can answer questions at a first level. We also have all the other members of the city team here. I want to ask my first of 2 scribes to come up. One of the scribes is going to make sure to keep track of all comments and questions. The others, as usual, are going to make a list by name. So if you, in a moment, once they get there, if when you raise your hand, you can say their name, and then say your name, and that will go on the list. So you say it when you raise your hand, we'll keep it up there, and we'll go by the list. Just 2 quick comments about Q&A. The 3 of us and our colleagues want to make sure to provide all information possible, and so we'll be focused on that. I think naturally the discussion will start to go towards, which alternative people favor or think is better or worse. And one thing that's really important there is we're not the audience for those comments because we don't get a vote on Wednesday. It's really starting to move toward the point of convincing each other of which one you would want to vote for or would want someone else to vote for. So we very much welcome those kind of comments. We won't be looking to respond to them because it wouldn't be appropriate. And we'd say, hey, talk to each other. And this is really on that level a kind of a pre-discussion leading up to the next meeting. So do we have any hands? And they should come with names. So what's your name? I know your name, but yes, but
Stacy Williams.
yeah, say it when you raise your hand so our scribe can get it up there. Lisa? Yep. Okay, go ahead, Stacy.
You mentioned the PLA, that you had adopted that. Do you know when that was adopted?
It was initially adopted in December, and then I think the City Council made some minor modifications this spring.
So when was the last one? Is that going to be available to us? Because I have the one from December. I don't see the one from the spring.
Oh,
so is
sure.
that going to be made available to us so that we know when the project gets done what the PLA is?
Yeah, and I can post that on the website. That's a good.
That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Cool.
Sure.
No, definitely so.
Thank you.
So next we have any other hands we put on our list? Kim? Jan? Any other hands? What's in the back? Say your name. Brunette? Ediol? Eddie, okay. So let's now go to Lisa. Pardon me if I can't totally hear your name. Go ahead, Lisa.
This is on. Oh, hi. Hi, everybody. Lisa. I have 4 questions. First off, can I get a copy of how everybody voted on what projects went the best?
Yep.
Because based on the maps that are behind us from the 17 groups, seem to be very different than this handout and this draft. And it seems like the only thing that we're really looking at is the strategic focus and changing that versus what everybody agreed upon.
So Lisa, let me just take your questions one at a time. So what you see on the maps and the scenarios are really quite exactly the way people voted. We exhaustively went over all the maps, all the sheets, all the reports. They weren't always totally consistent, so we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what was the real intent, which one came last. So they should be exactly right. If anyone finds a mistake, let us know. But that was really the focus of our work over the 3 days up to today.
That's
So
why
they
I would
should
like
be
the
right
tally
on.
sheet, actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so we can definitely share that.
Then also
sorry.
too, do you have copies of the draft displacement language? Because I know something recently came out with the
Yep.
state.
So Lisa, let's answer that question, and then if you could, let's go then to others on the list, and we'll come back to you, just to be
Okay.
fair.
Oh,
for
no,
two
I
questions.
totally
So-
understand.
Yeah, so displacement?
So the meeting, that's really loud. The outreach letter that we sent out on Saturday,
No, you're good.
says that we will be doing an anti-displacement meeting the week of October 9th. So we will be sending out invitations for that. We have not discussed that yet because according to the guidelines, we have to first establish the planning or the project area. And so we'll establish that on the 4th when we establish what projects or what proposals are moving forward. And that'll help us create that anti-displacement plan at that point.
And so we'll have, we'll,
That's in the guidelines.
The
Yes.
template language? I think they emailed it out.
yep. But if not, we'll double check and we'll make sure if everything is up there. So we've got, before we go back to the list, any new hands? Okay, we've got Kyle.
All right, sorry, this is a little feedback. There's 2 parts, but it's both related to our meeting last week. First part is related to how our project was presented in the project sheets. The project title did not include grocery store, which we had hoped was the main focus of what we were including. It was a new title, as well as half of our description wasn't included. So I have a concern that could have affected how people voted on the project with incomplete information. The second part,
Kyle, let's
yeah,
take
go ahead.
one at a time, and I'll ask everybody, since we gave indulgence to Lisa, I will to you, but then from then on, let's do one question at a time, just to be fair to everybody, and we'll come back around. So on the information, do you want to, Danielle, Laura?
We asked all project proposers to submit a title and a descriptive summary, so we use that information. We can discuss if that was maybe misplaced in email, but that's what we use. We asked everyone for a short title and then a summary, and we just copied and pasted that right in. If that email didn't come through, I apologize, but that's how we took the information, directly from the information that was provided.
Yeah,
Kyle,
the
your second
second
part?
part was related to my group experience in specific. You said there were trained facilitators, and our facilitator was new to staff at the city of Fresno and had no training to be able to facilitate the meeting, so that interrupted some things. And toward the end, people were just throwing out project numbers without us being able to discuss them and not being able to take them off the list. So for our map in particular, there's things on our project list that ended up on our map that not our whole group or even the majority got the chance to voice an opinion on.
So, and a good point, and that's one of the aspects we carefully considered. So you'll note can we switch back to one of the lists? Can you click us back to one of the alternatives? So we got a total of 36 projects. So the base that's in all of them that's 11, if I counted right earlier. So any possible small error of someone didn't mean to say something or people were throwing stuff out, we're just taking the top third. So those were clearly the ones that a lot of people supported. We're not taking any bubble teams, any things that were marginal. Those are the top. And then even you'll see in the alternative number 1 that then includes, I believe, 5 more projects, you're still only getting halfway through the list. So we're nowhere near the ones that are the second half of the priorities. It would be great if we could fund them all. We're funding, even in the all popularity alternative, the top half. So I think the small discrepancies will naturally fall out in that. So I think that, and that was intentional, because we recognize that no process is perfect, so we want to make sure to get the ones that clearly have broad support. So, yeah. So Kyle, I think on your own project, I think it would be really good, and anyone, this goes for everybody, it's not about Kyle, Kyle just happens to be the first. Please, if you've got comments and thoughts on your own project, please bring them to Laura or H to the side, because we want to make sure not to have this be a project proposer discussion. Is that okay? Yep, okay. So Kimberly is next.
Good evening. My question was about displacement, and I know you just mentioned something about that, but what my concern is that I keep hearing the term of the displacement plan, and I would like to know if there are any displacement plans with any of the projects, and if so, which ones are they?
So, and just to be clear on the nomenclature, displacement plan is a terrible name. It's like when Bush opened a center on the excellence in terrorism. It's not a displacement plan, it's an anti-displacement plan, all right? But that's the anti-displacement plan for the overall initiative, and that's what we'll be working on together at the meeting next week. And separately, Kimberly's asking, do any of the projects identify that they are going to displace?
They have not identified that. We've asked for mostly cost structures and overall project overviews. Once we determine what the projects are, we'll dig a little bit deeper into whether they do displace, don't displace, and how we work against that. And then, again, that'll be part of the overall anti-displacement plan to make sure that every project talks to it and it's specific to it, and each proposer is aware of their role and how that works moving forward.
And Kimberly, are you clarifying?
No, because we wouldn't be able to know what projects are going to be affected until you finalize the package that's moving forward.
Kimberly, are you looking to know if any projects themselves, like I'm building a housing project on this lot, if it's directly displacing? We can find that out before Wednesday. Just to be clear, also for anyone who hasn't had a chance in a while to read the guidelines anticipate a displacement plan or anti-displacement plan that doesn't just relate to I'm building housing and I'm going to move 3 people. It's much more about more broadly, will the development of the neighborhood have secondary and tertiary impacts that might displace people? So it's asking us to look more broadly and think about the long term of the neighborhoods, not just will one person get displaced, which is obviously important, but that we need to do more than that according to the guidelines. And it's that more that will be the discussion next week. Is that Jean or Jem? Who was that? I'm sorry, Jean, okay. And any other new hands? Go ahead.
Jan.
Thank you.
There was discussion about popularity and housing and urban greening, but there was no discussion about the requirement that there be connectors between all the neighborhoods. How is that factored into how you made decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every package has the FACS project, which is the transit service connector. And I think most of the packages also have complete streets projects in every single, yes, they all have shared mobility, which is another connecting piece.
So they all have complete streets, it's required, shared mobility, and FACS, which is that intention to create a network between the projects. Brunette, go ahead.
The question I have for you is the young lady down there had asked you about displacement. So I'm trying to figure out, and I want you to answer my question, how it is you can start trying to make a project when you didn't even think about whether you're displacing anybody. And there was one project that went before the city council. It went before planning, which is Sylvester's Hall project. It went before the Planning Commission on the 2nd, and then it went to the City Council. They passed it. You have all of these streets that are in that's going to be widened from California and Walnut around that whole entire area. It's supposed to be 4 lanes. It's going from 2 lanes to 4 lanes with signal lights. Now, you're talking about a project didn't pass. Somebody's lying, and I have the paperwork on it. And everybody in here needs to get this paperwork because something is wrong with this whole entire, this entire meetings that you guys been having. Because there's no way that should have been passed because that's in the specific plan. The specific plan has not been passed. So in order for you to have a TCC anything, you're supposed to have a project. So I want to know how you guys are doing this.
So if we can, let's take the pieces in reverse order. So first, the Southwest specific plan and how the approval of the plan relates to TCC. Who can best answer that? Possibly the councilman, if I see him do I see him? If not, I will, but it's probably a councilman question. And as he's walking up here, so then I'll go to he's got a mic. So Councilman, just clarity on the sequence of the Southwest Specific Plan and TCC.
The Southwest Specific Plan will be adopted at the end of October. I think we have it scheduled for the October 26th meeting.
And so and I think as many of you participated in its creation, it's long been created. Importantly, a lot of what we're doing is based on it. It will be formally adopted before the final application goes in as required.
That's correct.
Right. So then, Brennan, in terms of displacement, first, I think it's helpful for Laura to clarify the order and why we're making sure to select projects before doing this displacement meeting. You stated this before, but I just wanted to, yeah.
Right, so
Closer.
it just, there's like feedback.
Here, you can
right
come over
underneath
here.
the mic.
Come over here. Come to the middle.
All I hear is static in my ear. So again, the anti-displacement plan is based on the project planning area. Right now we have kind of a broad planning area that's made of all of the specific plans, but we'll have to zone in on the 5 contiguous miles that the state requires. Once we zone in on that 5 contiguous miles, once you all vote on the final package, that will give us kind of our anti-displacement plan area. And so that's where we can then move forward on those pieces. And as I mentioned, we'll have a meeting the week of October 9th. Everyone's invited to come and give us your input. The state also has anti-displacement guidelines that are in the program guidelines. So if you want some background on what they're asking of us, you can also look at those. I think that's really good background for anybody else to have as well, as it, again, pertains to what they'll be asking from us.
Great. So I'm going to speak to the particular displacement of any given project, but before I do that, if someone could be prepared to clarify what the council discussed in relationship to the Sylvester Hall project so in terms of, as Kimberly mentioned, she was concerned, are there any projects, the actual project? So I'll take one that probably doesn't, just to not raise flags. So the tot lot. So does the tot lot displace anyone? I've actually worked on a tot lot that was going to, so it's possible. We committed earlier, we're going to double check that. No one reported displacement, but we're going to double check that the actual projects themselves aren't displacing. But that doesn't mean there isn't a concern of displacement, because they can have secondary and tertiary impacts, and that's what the meeting on the 9th is. But before Wednesday, we will double check to make sure no one's proposing building something somewhere where someone already lives or already does business. And we will double check that. So in terms of the Sylvester Hall discussion, I think was anyone there at that council meeting? Can they report exactly what did or didn't take place? Councilman? Sorry. And this is important. The project was discussed, but I think I just want to make sure everyone's clear. The question is, Sylvester Hall's project was before council, and there was some sense that it was quote unquote passed and thus preempted decisions here.
Well, there are a number of entitlements that have to go through, and we approved some entitlements.
Right. And just to be clear on entitlements for people who aren't familiar?
Yeah, so we have to make sure that if the project is actually going to happen, that it goes through the proper entitlement process. The land use is correct, the zoning is correct, making sure we bring it from the county into the city and what have you. So we are preparing the ground, obviously, for that project.
And we're requiring all our projects, particularly the housing projects, because the state requires us to go through the entitlement process. It doesn't presume that any of them are funded or will ever be built. They can't propose if they haven't done their due diligence. They have to get those preliminary approvals. Those approvals don't mean that they get funding or will be selected, and you'll note a good number of them haven't been selected, and some of those have gone farther than the Sylvester Hall project in the process.
What is the name of that project? What number?
Well, actually, that project itself isn't on these lists. Well, which? The MLK Activity Center is, but.
Are you asking about the street?
Well,
So there are multiple components of that project, which I think and Sylvester would like to speak on behalf of his own project. Maybe that's.
But just to be clear, there are multiple, for say, there's the City Center College, part of that project. But let me just finish it then. And then MLK Activity Center Park. The city's is offering up $17 million in match fund improvements around the site. Those are components of the eventual project, but they aren't the project in of itself.
So
Sylvester, did you want to add clarity?
And it'd be good for the developer to speak, but I'll say it from the council's perspective too. This project may be the most unique project that's happened in West Fresno in probably 60 years, with the number of components it has, where you have commercial, retail, park, education, and single-family housing. So all of those components, as many of you in this room know, aren't necessarily eligible for TCC funding. So what we want to do when you see that project up there, what the city wanted to do was to make sure that we prepared the ground for that. So there's significant infrastructure work going into that project. But that is probably, this project that you guys are referring to as the MLK Activity Center.
Just to be clear, that's in every scenario. So all four scenarios have the MLK Street improvement.
I can't let you talk. Sorry, we had to, so
Yeah.
let me just to be clear on the process point, and then we'll let, so that whatever action the council did or didn't take in relation to one developer's project doesn't presume anything about what does or doesn't. I know, it doesn't though.
No, but she's saying, how are you putting the cart before the horse?
We're-
Just to reiterate her
we're not.
Her question is, if they approve it,
Yes.
and you approve a displacement, does your
No,
displacement
yeah,
policy
yes.
go through their already
Sorry.
approving it? Does that make sense, the cart before the horse?
Yes, no, I am. So, but they didn't, just to be clear, and I know it's, the process has multiple approvals in it. The project hasn't been approved or selected here until there's a vote. In order to apply, projects need to demonstrate readiness, and part of readiness is going through the entitlement process, demonstrating that you fit with existing plans, seeking permits, et cetera. So that part of that process is what happened at council. It doesn't speak to in any way whether steering committee decides to approve it, or even if Sylvester decided and his teammates decided to apply. They are going through the standard development process as all the housing projects are. So I think we can speak for a minute more to that project, but the process, those two things are separate. He was going to council, all of our housing projects had been going to different city departments separate from TCC. No, so what I want to make sure to do is we can reiterate that, because this is, I can see how it might not be totally clear, and then I want to make sure to honor our list. So can you reiterate the interaction of the specific plan? Because I think it is challenging to note that it's still to be approved, though, before the deadline.
The deadline's November 30th.
30th, yeah.
Yeah, so the Southwest Specific Plan has until the time that we submit the full package to be approved. We have prepared for that to come before council for consideration on October 26th. We believe at that time it will be adopted.
So
And so
I'm going to
and-
check
and then-
for additional hands.
And then just to be clear,
Oh.
and that meets the processed requirement for the TCC funding.
So I just want to check for, Sylvester, I actually think we don't want to get into the particulars of individual projects. So unless folks, I think I want to make sure to catch other voices. So let's add other hands. Ma'am, say your name out loud so we can go up on the list.
Well, let me just see that.
Esther, and then back? Hester, excuse me, Mrs. Hester. Tony, and Ashley, did you have your hand up? Nope, okay. So next on the list is, huh? Arian? Aaron? No, okay. So then we'll go to, oh, okay, excuse me. Yep, okay, right. We're all learning each other's names. Please, sir.
So my question is a voting question for our next meeting, and I'm not sure if this information was shared before.
Sure.
But is the vote, is it a process of elimination in rounds, or is it a simple majority?
So, good question. So, the requirement that we've adopted since the beginning is decisions are made by 2/3 votes, like we're having the meeting tonight because 2/3 of the eligible voting members present voted to have this meeting. At the meeting on Wednesday, we'll start with 4 scenarios. No scenario can be selected until it receives 2/3 of the vote. It's possible that on the first vote, one does, and then we've chosen one. If the members don't vote 2/3 for one, we would go through a set of elimination votes, taking the bottom one, the one that got the least votes out, until we reach to a point where we got 2/3. So the goal would be to find the natural and organic 2/3 majority point of voting members. And that's really the inspiration for just being really clear about these scenarios come from the most popular projects as selected by the 17 groups, adding in what we need to do by state guidelines, and then for scenarios 2, 3, and 4, adding in the top focuses from the local criteria and other discussions. So the goal is to start as close as possible as we can to what we expect would get 2/3, because it's what 2/3 of the people selected. And Danielle, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, that the first 11 all got 2/3 support, correct?
Yes.
Right, so the first 11, the reason they're there, they all got support by 2/3 of the groups. So again, that's where we're headed. And we don't know if we'll get there on a first vote, a second vote, or a third vote, but that would be the goal. Does that speak to your question? Great. And just to be clear, remember I was about to say next week, in 2 days, it's the eligible voters who will be voting. If anybody has any question about whether they're an eligible voter, please don't wait until Wednesday. Please speak with Gloria. Gloria, you can stand up, Gloria, if you don't mind, just so. Speak to Gloria, who's the administrator of the voting list. She can double check if you have any question. She'll also be there the night of, but don't wait. And her name is all over many of our emails. If you know anybody who isn't sure, the more we can figure out ahead of time, then we can focus on the substance. So before we put, Diane, let's see, any new hands? We got, go ahead and say your name so everybody knows. Kathy. Say your name. Mrs. Curry. Mary in the back. Yuri? Yeah, and any other new hands? Venice? Venice, you got Venice? Okay, any other new hands? Okay, so the next one is Diane? Oh, Venice, with a V. Not V, but V like Victor. Yep, yeah, V. Cool, so let's see. Diane? Cool.
I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it or not, but I want you to. The question is that the whole point of the TCC money was for a certain census tract because of the pollution, the health problems, and all those other issues related to that. Now, I understand that they say it has to be somewhere near the high-speed rail, but the question is, that money was designated for a specific type of situation. I want to know what those projects are going to do to eliminate the problems that we have in our census tract that is supposed to be getting that money to create and eliminate the problems that we do have.
So let's take both pieces. First, just clarity on the project area, and then secondly on the impact. Danielle, it seems like would go to you.
Sure. Yeah. So as you can see from a lot of the lists, a far majority of the projects are in 93706, and that is because the committee spoke and we heard you, and we tried our best to represent that in the different scenarios. Second, to the way in which the projects address a lot of the inequities, It's a function of every project. The affordable housing projects, they're providing quality housing for people and safe living conditions, and the parks are providing trees and open space in a community that doesn't have a lot. I think that's a question that's subject to a lot of folks' interpretation, and that's why we've really opened up this process, because we wanted to see what you thought needed to be done in order to address a lot of those inequities.
And as a planner and landscape architect who got to work on the Southwest specific plan, I think these alternatives intentionally take different approaches to doing that. So some people would say the way to do that is to build more urban green space and create space so people can spend more time outside, improve public health. That's that alternative. Other people would say the best way to do that is to create quality affordable housing near jobs and transit. So alternatives do that. Other people would have a diversity of views and thus pick projects, and that's the popularity alternative. There isn't one answer to that question of how to best serve the environmental and social justice. And so, and that part, yes, no, and that's why it goes back to the, right, well, that's exactly, these are, and again, this is exactly the discussion that should be had tonight and Wednesday amongst the voting members. Do you want to go with the popularity alternative, emphasize urban green, or affordable housing? Those are different strategies toward these ends, not our call, the call of the steering committee, which strategy you want to focus on. And that's exactly why these alternatives intentionally take different strategies, so as a group you can decide. Yes, Mrs. Hester, did you move? Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. I moved, sorry.
I just piggybacking off of what Ms. Diane just said about the grants. I think it's kind of confusing is that the TCC monies was allocated for one thing. Now all of a sudden we're talking about our overall plan, the grant plan, the 2030 plan. That has nothing to do with the TCC. The TCC was supposed to be to better things in the 93706. And the whole thing is that a lot of people in the Southwest, we don't know what's going on in our community until we get to a meeting. They put a Dollar General down the street from me. We looked at it for months. Everybody was wondering, what the heck is it? Now, other communities know what's going to come up in their community before it even come up. We never know. And I'm saying that literally because we never know until we get to a meeting. Now, I get here to find out you're trying to widen out about 4 or 5 different streets over in Southwest Fresno to 4 lanes. Our community is not large enough to even hold 4 lanes in some of these Walnut. What? 4 lanes coming down Walnut, what's the purpose? What are we going to benefit from it? The whole thing is everything we ask for, we never get. We've asked for retail. Anyone in this audience can drive over in West Fresno. We don't even have a Walmart. They have a Walmart in every area you go in. Every area you go in, you have a Walmart. You have a Winco's. You have a Home Depot. We don't have that. So if you're going to give us something that we could use, something we're going to benefit from. And that it just doesn't make sense to come out here and keep going over and over the same thing over and over again. What do you want? You could just ride over there and see what we want, what we need. We need everything. Yep. We don't even have a cleaners over in our area. We shouldn't have to come and say, what do we want? We don't want to fight with North Fresno. We don't want to fight with East Fresno. We want everything they have. So what's the difference? What's the problem? What's the problem? Diane just asked you, why isn't the money coming to where it's supposed to come? We shouldn't even be discussing this. It shouldn't even be a discussion.
Ms. Hester, if I may, I want to ask Danielle to first speak to where the money goes, and then I want to address the consistency with the plans, the Southwest plan. So first, in terms of, I think it would be helpful to go back to recognize the criteria for selecting the project area. starting with the CAL score, just to be clear on where we're working?
Sure, absolutely. So as you've seen in this process, we've had a deliberate and very intentional focus on investments in Southwest Chinatown and downtown Fresno. The state has really asked that we focus on the most disadvantaged communities in the state. Because of their request to also focus on high-speed rail, we chose a relative project area of interest that addresses both of those desired needs of the state. That being said, going to your question about, where's the Walmart, where's the things that people continually ask for, we don't make the rules for what this money can and can't be spent on. That's a Strategic Growth Council decision. And we're not allowed to spend these dollars on things like Walmarts or retail. There is a grocery store in 2 of the scenarios that Kyle mentioned. He was very creative in putting that project together in a way that could be used bits and pieces of the money in a way that was eligible, while also still trying to get to a result of a grocery store. So that's just one example. This is a process, and we're trying to figure out scenarios that lay the groundwork for things like, the Walmart or other retail to come into the community, knowing that we're really tied in terms of what we can actually allow these funds to be spent on.
And I could understand that. But when you come out and start widening streets, isn't that in the same?
Yeah.
So why is the money,
Let me speak to that just real quick, because there would be a forum if you wanted to speak to that. You're right about those changes there. They're all consistent with the Southwest specific plan, and no project can be up here if it's not consistent with the Southwest specific plan and the Fulton Corridor specific plan. So if there's a concern that a project is suggesting something more broadly like widening streets that you don't like, the intent of a specific plan is to give voice to the community's desires. So these projects have to follow that plan. And so if you have concerns about that, it would be good to speak to the councilman and his aide about the specific plan, because the project is following those plans.
And just to add one more thing on the streets, because I want to answer that as well. I think that's a really good thing to surface in the meetings that happen about the displacement avoidance strategy, so that there can be creative discussions about, if the specific plan calls for widening of the road, how do we do this in a way that really doesn't displace anyone? How do we do this in a way that doesn't move people's properties?
So another piece of the puzzle, and then pardon me, I want to make sure to follow the list. Next week, there's also a requirement in the proposal that we not only document all the discussions we've already had, but we make really clear how we're going to continue to do community engagement. And Mrs. Hester, one thing, so we have to do an ongoing, and we should do an ongoing community engagement plan. So it would be great to have your involvement in that meeting next week. So how do we make sure that as these 20-odd projects go forward, that they aren't like that the people who are immediately around them know about them in detail from the beginning? And we're required to figure out a plan to do more than has been done in the past in order to apply for TCC. So next, Tony. Get a mic to Tony.
Thank you. Hi. I was hoping you could give us some more information on the process that you use to select the housing projects. There was quite a few of them, and not all of them are here. And in this forum, or maybe on Wednesday, are you expecting for some of the projects to move around on the list, or how does this all work?
So I'll address the process, and then you can address the substance of housing.
Yes.
So just on the process, the scenarios have been very carefully built on the popularity of projects in general, and then when it came to talk to select a type, the popularity within type, like amongst housing projects, for example. So where the meeting will be, where the conversation is on Wednesday, is first and foremost, if we follow the vote that came out of the 17 groups, does that create a scenario that meets with 2/3 requirements? And that's our goal on Wednesday, is to see how do we find that 2/3 agreement based on what everybody selected. So that will be where we'll start on Wednesday.
And just to speak a little bit more to the mechanics of which housing projects are and aren't in here, there were 10 housing projects that came through the system, and we really tried to be really, we tried to maintain fidelity to the ranking about how those projects showed up from our last meeting. I don't think we have a single housing project in any of the scenarios that wasn't in the top 5 of housing projects that were selected. And even you'll see there's 2 housing projects that have the caveat next to them. We chose to leave those in even though they have some question marks with the state because we want to honor our community process and not pull projects out without allowing more discussion publicly about that.
So let's check for additional hands. Any additional hands? So I'll clarify, and then I want to catch the additional hands. So these have been carefully constructed, as Danielle said, following the priority order. We think that's really, the order of preference of the 17 groups. We think it's really important to follow that. Once you depart from that, you're entering a very different realm of considering, well, why would you select, change out one and not the other? So where we hope we can come to consensus by 2/3 majority vote on Wednesday is agree to one of the proposals that really comes from the priority order created by the 17 groups. So that will really, that's the goal of the meeting. And so we'll start there in order to honor all the work around the walls. And I actually expect, given that all these projects here had 2/3 group support, and that the focuses come from the broader discussion and local priorities, that in all likelihood we'll come to 2/3 agreement on one of these. So in additional hands, we've got Lee, and let me just check before adding folks who've spoken before. Anyone who hasn't spoken already. And so then we've got Lisa and Mary? Diane. And then, so it's about 6:42. I think we're going to aim to, we'll continue till 7. And then so we still have time to look at the maps and to discuss one-on-one. Does that seem reasonable? We'll get another 18, 20 minutes of Q&A, and then we will have more time for individual discussion, okay? So, Ivan, okay. So next on the, Ivanka? Ivanka, and the next person is Kathy. Which Kathy was it? It was this Kathy. Kathy.
Thank you. Kathy from Fresno, Chinatown. The questions that I have is on the specific plans that everyone has been touting as the basis for these decisions. Some of them are old, and some of them, the people that were included in that discussion, the neighborhoods have no idea what those plans are. You talk about a park for Chinatown. No one in Chinatown knows that section that was suggested, besides that it's polluted. So you have areas, thank you, it really is polluted, that you have specific plans that many of the communities never had real input or current knowledge, not 10 years ago, not 15 years ago, but current, like the last year of what was planned for them. The other one is...
Kathy, let me, just to refer to all, let me get an answer to that question, and then we'll see if we have time to come back around. So, Daniel, do you want to take that in terms of which specific plans are being referenced here?
Sure. So the plans that are relevant to transformative climate communities are the Fulton Corridor specific plan. I think that's maybe the one that you're talking about. And then the Southwest specific plan, which is about to be adopted. As you can see, we have a deliberative process to decide on projects. So while a lot of projects that are before you come from those specific plans, there's still an additional layer of decision making that we're in right now.
And also, just to be clear about sequence, the specific plans that are relevant by the state guidelines are only those that were passed since the last general plan. And actually, the guidelines say we can only do projects where there is such a specific plan. So they're very clear, and that's part of very much what leads toward our broader area of consideration, is places where there's a specific plan that was duly created, and in our case, with community involvement, since the last general plan. So Kathy, your concern's well placed, but we can't do work where there are only old specific plans. The state wouldn't let us.
No, the question that I have
Yeah.
is in fairness to the communities. The
Yeah.
other one is that you had also said on the popularity, but when you, who the hell cares about popularity? What we want is economic development that is fair to all of the areas. The other one that you had talked about was a true economic development and not supplementing the city of Fresno's infrastructure budget. Because the things that are, some of these proposals that are on that list are the city's responsibility to any community group and not with these specific funds that need to go for economic development within those areas. The other one too is I really don't like the way that you guys set up when you had the beginning of sessions where you had specific people that had specific projects talking and getting people to be used to seeing them and what they're, that is not fair. What you were doing was setting up those projects to win the popular vote. And that's what we're looking at right now. Thank you.
So, certainly not the intent. And again, one of the reasons why we have a popularity alternative and an alternative that says we're not going all by popularity. We're taking the first half that way, and the second half is either by guideline or by housing or focus on urban greening, is again, that's the steering committee's call. Do you want to go all by popularity? And probably more accurately, it's by preference of the small groups made up of everybody here who were hopefully, making thoughtful, decisions to the extent that was possible in the time. So that's your call. And if you want to go less popularity, you would go toward one of the other alternatives. So. No, I don't. Okay. Gary? Oh, Mary. Oh, sorry, Mary. Mrs. Curry, please. Do you need a mic?
Thank you. And before I start speaking, sir, I would appreciate if you would allow me to say what I have to say without interruption. Thank you. First of all, it's a flawed process. There are no incentives or no extra incentives for West Fresno to vote. You've spreaded us out, one here and one there and one somewhere else, and we're in these groups. And whatever the group decides, that's what we're going to go with. It's like throwing a piñata up and saying, hit it, and whatever falls out, it's yours. That is not appropriate, and you did not give any consideration to West Fresno residents. We should be the people voting. People all over the city. I don't know what it is about a dollar sign, but they come from everywhere. And it never fails that we are the butt of it all. I've lived in Fresno since 1956. I have watched West Fresno deteriorate over the years. I've watched people do this dance over and over again. They get us to do community input, and that's the end of it. Now, tonight, we don't get a say because you're packaging this stuff in a way that if I get what I want, I get a lot of stuff I didn't want. And so that is not appropriate. It is not democratic, and it's not fair. And I would like to see the fact that West Fresno residents ought to be given more consideration than any other people involved in this vote because we live there. We've lived there. I've lived there for 60 plus years, and I've seen it fall apart, and nobody seems to give a hoot. And I'm concerned about it because I raised my family in West Fresno. But the other thing I want you to understand is we can't win for losing because every time that something comes up that we get an opportunity to be a part of, it gets watered down. Our vote won't count. You put two of us here and two of us there, one over here and one over there, and we're in a group of folks. I don't even know who they are. I don't know where they live, but the way it's structured right now, anybody that walks through West Fresno has a vote. And that is not appropriate, is not fair, and I don't think these funds were meant to be used in that particular way. And the old Fresno Hotel, I've walked through it, and why that appears on this list, I cannot figure out. It is a dump. It should be destroyed. I don't care how historical it is. It should be a dump because I've walked through it when I was on the school board. They wanted to buy it. I said, let's walk through it and look first. And when everybody looked, they said, oh, no, we can't do this. It's not our place to restore and refurbish old buildings. But the bottom line is West Fresno does not have a chance. And I'm at this moment inviting all West Fresno residents to meet with me and others at Rising Star Baptist Church immediately following this meeting, because unless we demand, we get nothing. And I'm very unhappy and upset about this whole process.
Thank you, Mrs. Curry. So I want to just speak to a couple of the process points, and then I'd ask Danielle to speak to the distribution of projects in the scenarios. So this is, throughout the whole process, it's been a balance between how do we make this an open process, everyone who comes to a meeting has a right to participate, and how do we honor people who actually live, work, or own property in the project area. And every time we come to planning an agenda, to proposing an approach to voting, it's always that balance. So for example, to be an eligible voter, you need to either live, work, or own a business or property in the 2 zip codes covered. So the only people voting on Wednesday will be people who are direct stakeholders. And that was a clear step towards the people who are impacted by these projects, and the people who have a stake in them should make the decision. Now, coming up to the meeting last week, there was a lot of debate internally. Do we only have voters participate in the small groups on the theory that, hey, the small groups are really important? It's not voting, but they're really important, so only folks who are voters should participate? Or should we maybe have voters have their own groups and non-voters have their groups? In the end, we came down to that wouldn't fit with the spirit of how the whole process was intended to be open, and that a lot of our community partners who do community work would never want to have a meeting where certain folk were in certain groups and other people were over here in separate groups. So for that meeting, we felt that the right balance, and again, these are tough calls, the right balance was let everybody participate in the small groups, because we have a counterbalance that at meeting 5, it's only voters. So that's the balance throughout this process, being open, but giving privilege when possible to those who are actually live, work, own business or property. So at the meeting on Wednesday, the only people voting will be those people who live, work, or own business or property in the area, to make sure that they're making the final decision. On the distribution of projects, Danielle, I think while we didn't distribute them, those in the groups did, I just want to make sure people are seeing what's on these maps in terms of where these projects are.
Sure. And we haven't done some deeper analytics, but would be happy to do that for each of the scenarios to really play out how things work by geography. I think you can see, though, in the top priority list of projects that are in every package, I think every single one is in 93706.
And just to be...
I'm sorry? Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right.
I'm sorry.
Well, so go ahead and continue what you were covering.
Sure. So, and we've, Mrs. Curry, to answer that, we've tried to make this as open of a process as possible by allowing people to submit projects. Some scenarios have more of an emphasis on grassroots projects than others, and those, maybe not surprisingly, tended to be more popular, the ones that came from community groups. So we've done, what we can from a process perspective to keep it open. Of course, there's always room for improvement when we're working on an insanely tight time frame. It's where we can get, but this is a deliberative discussion that we can have further on Wednesday.
Well, my concern, and I'm sorry to speak again, but my concern is that there are some valuable projects on the list, but we don't get a choice. Those of us who live in West Fresno, we don't get a choice. We get to take what other people think we should have, and that's where the problem is. People are making decisions about us, and they live across town somewhere. They live anywhere, but they don't live in West Fresno. So where's the priority for the people who actually live in West Fresno? Not the folks who work in West Fresno or walk through West Fresno, but people who live in West Fresno.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you. I will just say the largest representation on our steering committee membership are residents of West Fresno.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, yep. So, yeah. So, and I think we can make sure to share that breakdown. Again, it's actually, I think, and almost everyone here, I think, would attest. Folks it's rare to have a set of meetings anywhere, but also here in Fresno, where we have the 3 central city neighborhoods all come together, and we've been constantly remarking about how the list has representation from all neighborhoods and actually then reflects what's been the discussion, a disproportionate participation by folks from West Fresno, which then gets reflected in what was chosen, which is disproportionately in West Fresno. So not perfect at all, but I think it's really important as you go home tonight and go to the later meeting, look at the list, look at the maps in the back and the maps which graphically represent the alternatives, and see that certainly not perfect, but a dramatic representation of projects that are in West Fresno and that came from West Fresno as compared to the other neighborhoods, which I think is a representation of the work that everybody here has done. So we have Gary. Gary, where are you at? Oh, Yuri. Yep, that's okay.
Okay, this is frustrating for a lot of people, but I grew up in West Fresno and I left here because of what we're discussing tonight. I'm just going to say this. I've studied social science in African American communities for the past 30 years across the country, across the United States. And I looked at the project of Tulsa, Oklahoma and Raleigh, North Carolina. Usually when communities of our nature have our own, we get destroyed because we've aspired to be more than what other people wanted us to have. I'll say that number one. Number two is education is the most powerful thing a mind can have. And by us having this institution coming to West Fresno, think about what our children can have. It's not about me, it's about what my children can have in the future. Another thing is we need financial institutions. We talk about communities. We don't have a community in West Fresno. We have neighborhoods. We can't financially sustain our own neighborhoods, yet let a community. So we need financial stability. So by these projects happening over there, there's a lot of resentment. I get that. I'm part of the resentment because I see there's certain things that we need to have that we should have had a long time ago. But now that it's finally happening, I think we need to come together as a community now that we can be a community and fulfill the promise to move forward. And as I go to these meetings and I look around, Willie Lynch's facts, not a theory, it's a fact, is well in play. And those of you who have not read Willie Lynch's work, read his work. I've studied the work forward and backwards, and it's still at play. Once we get over that as a people and as a community, and for those who don't want us to have, we have to look for ourselves, to take care of ourselves. And there's a lot of good people that are helping us accomplish what we need to accomplish. We can't get past that. So I think we need to move forward and make things happen. Accept these projects. You get good and bad and everything. I'll buy a pair of shoes. They might last me for 2 weeks and I spent $60 on them. I'm upset. But I wear those shoes. So let's move forward with this project and make it happen. And let's benefit what we can benefit from it and make it happen and work for us to our advantage. It's possible.
Thank you, Yuri. So we got Venice and then Carol. And just one note, so we're going to complete the list, even though we'll go past 7. And then everyone on staff is all staying, and so there'll be plenty of time to answer questions individually, and we'll keep the slides up, and there are maps of the alternatives. But we're going to complete this list, and then we'll cover next steps and stay for further individual discussion. So Venice and then Carol. Venice?
Thank you. So my question has to do with the fact that you've already packaged these projects. So I'd like to know when the Community Steering Committee will have the opportunity to amend or to modify them. Because it was our understanding that the packages would not have come pre-packaged the way that they are. And so this is somewhat of a surprise because I see things on here like Hotel Fresno, which really only got 6 votes, and yet it appears on two of these packages. So it doesn't seem like there's a consistency in looking at the priorities, and certainly the idea of spending TCC money to rehabilitate an asbestos-filled building does not seem like it is holding to the integrity of the legislation. The second thing is just that the housing projects are not what the community has asked for, and that is single-family housing. And there is a difference between single-family housing and affordable housing. And so people want to live in West Fresno, but they also want to be able to purchase single-family houses. Would you address those, please?
So I can certainly address the first one, and then maybe Denise or maybe also others on the policy team could speak to housing. So in terms of the 4 alternatives that we have to date, the goal would first to be to check to see and we expect that it will be the case, does one of them meet with 2/3 agreement? Because we've carefully constructed them, taking the projects first that had 2/3 support, taking next what we have to include in order to meet the state guidelines, and then either continuing with the projects that were most popular or continuing with projects that speak to one of the articulated priorities. Now, these are things that have to be debated amongst the members because I know there's diverse perspectives. The second highest rated local priority was affordable housing. That isn't to in any way question, Denise, what you're saying about single-family homes. It's only to suggest there's a diversity of perspectives, and that's for the group to be. Well, actually, the second highest priority amongst local criteria articulated by people who came to meeting three was affordable housing. So again, there's a diversity of opinion. That's why we have a discussion at meeting 5. If none of the four alternatives get 2/3 of the vote, then we'll discuss from there. But we're really cautious about departing from where most people voted in meeting 4, because once we do that, then we're in territory of it's hard to decide, well, who gets to decide what? So we really feel like there's a lot of common ground in something that starts with half of the money going to projects that got 2/3 of the vote. And then the next portion are requirements. So that, I mean, it's hard to deny we can't deny the requirements. It's kind of tough to say, no, we're not going to do projects that 2/3 of the people wanted. So then you've got the last portion, and that's what's different on the 4. And we're trying to offer 4 good options for that part that's different. Popularity, most housing units, most new housing units, or urban green. And we anticipate that one of those will get 2/3. So in terms of the use of single-family homes or not, I don't know if actually Sophia's here. Is Sophia here? Okay, because this isn't a direct TCC question. It was a critical debate in the Southwest planning process, and I was hoping that somebody might address. Go ahead.
There is a tangent related to TCC, and Venice, I know you know this, but for the sake of everyone else in the room, TCC can't fund single-family housing, and so there weren't any projects that went through a process that included single-family housing because of that specific piece of the guidelines.
Councilman?
Check. And Dr. on this side, Dr. Curry, I wanted to really acknowledge that question, and thank you for bringing that up. It's one that is an important one, single-family housing. And I think Danielle answered the technical question about why you don't see single-family housing in TCC projects, but the idea was that some of these projects would have single-family housing, like when we talk about the MLK Activity Center, it has a market rate, single-family housing component. So if we're smart, TCC has always been about being able to leverage private investment, which is why when you look at that list up there, one of the priorities for the city was to come in and do the off-sites around there. Because not only did we know that was going to help with TCC-related projects, we knew that it would help with the ones that are unrelated to TCC, like commercial, single-family housing. So what's happening right now is as we continue to work with that project and projects like it, on the city side, unrelated to TCC, we try to do what we can to move those projects along to meet the goal, fulfill the goal of market rate single-family housing in West Fresno. So it's a high priority of mine. I know we've talked about it in great detail, and I truly appreciate you bringing that point up. And sadly, because of the density requirements in TCC, single-family housing doesn't qualify on its own. But if we do this right, then we will encourage the investment of single-family home developers that have intimated that they're very interested in bringing single-family home development to West Fresno, dovetailing off of these projects. So in essence, TCC will work in being the leverage factor that we wanted it to be. So I hope that provided a little bit more insight into it. But you're right. I mean, we can't use TCC money for single-family housing, but what we can do is use TCC money to encourage single-family housing, and we think we're doing that.
We have Carol and then Matt. Carol? Go.
I'm speaking for Carol. She had a question. She's not a speaker, so she asked me to ask this question. And the question is this. In order to get this money, there had to be an original RFP or proposal that was written requesting why this money was required for the projects that the TCC is wanting to do. So basically, the steering committee, all of you that are here and a part of the steering committee, I'm sure you would like to see that original proposal that went to Sacramento that designated that the census tract over here in Southwest Fresno was the one that was most in need of the money in comparison to LA and some of the other areas. So we would like to see that actual original proposal that went to the cap and trade organization that funds the TCC money.
So
Thank you
I
for
can
the
answer-
question. So please go.
Yeah, I
go
can
ahead.
answer that question. So there wasn't a request for proposal that was submitted. If you go to the Strategic Growth Council's website, and I think we linked to this on our website as well, they have a
Who are the
rulemaking.
Strategic Growth Council?
They are the entity that oversees this funding for the state. So they have a notice of rulemaking that outlines the reasons why Fresno was chosen. And so that document explains why we got here, but it wasn't an application to the state.
Where did it come from, Daniel?
I'm sorry? No, there was not a proposal submitted.
So
Designated to
Yeah.
our census tract, and there was no proposal that was submitted. So how did Fresno get to the top of the building then?
We have a mayor that fought for that money very hard.
Then obviously something was written and something was submitted.
So
I mean,
just,
obviously,
no,
there's got to be a way that that was
let me
done.
get you then answer that question, but I don't want it to be a debate. So predates me, but it was a legislative process. So who is best in place to answer that question? Can I call on our former mayor? Just to answer, this is a question, how is it that Fresno and certain census tracts are designated for this money? And to respect everyone's time, I want to get an answer to this, and then we're going to Matt, Lee, and Ivanka to close up our discussion. Oh, no. For second rounds, yeah.
So in 2013, President Obama and the Strong Cities, Strong Communities program, coupled with the Brown administration and the city of Fresno, got together and convened an infill finance task force. The focus of that task force was, how do we figure out how to get projects to pencil in neighborhoods in inner city Fresno? Single family doesn't pencil, Walmart doesn't pencil, multifamily doesn't pencil. So we all want to see investment and revitalization in the core of our city, and yet the market doesn't support that type of activity. The state took away redevelopment dollars and redevelopment authority, which was the city's only local tool, albeit completely misused in the city of Fresno for decades, creating the problems we're now trying to deal with. But we didn't even have that local tool anymore. And the state was in the process of passing sweeping climate legislation that said you have to reduce your vehicle miles traveled and you have to put housing and development close to transit. So we went to the state in partnership with the White House and we said, we cannot do what you are telling us to do. The only thing that works in the central San Joaquin Valley from a market standpoint is sprawl and neighborhoods north of Herndon and now north of the river in Madera County and in Clovis and in other outlying areas. So we are literally ill-equipped and handicapped to do what you are telling us we must do. So you have to help us create a special financing mechanism and a special program that for a season would reinvest the infrastructure dollars to help us reignite and reorient our market away from the sprawl foot pattern we've seen for 60 years and back to the inner city of Fresno. And by the way, you're putting billions of dollars in high-speed rail. Do you want your high-speed rail investment to deliver people from throughout the state to one of the most devastated, distressed center city areas in all of the state and in the nation? We started that process in 2013. We argued for it in 2014. They said, well, we cannot do anything just for Fresno, but we want to go see if there are other cities that have a similar problem. So they spent all of 2014 studying and assessing whether there were other cities who were similar to Fresno. They produced a report, the Strategic Growth Council, that outlined, oh, in fact, there are some other cities that are similar to Fresno, so maybe we should do something as a state. In 2015, we started lobbying the governor's office and saying, look, you have all this cap and trade money. It's coming down in silos. And while you may be subsidizing some Teslas in Orange County, and you may see a charging station here and an affordable housing project there, there's no way to work across those programs to create the catalytic effect that we need to see, an explosion of investment to come anywhere close to rivaling what's going on around our borders and across the river. So give us some flexibility. I'm going to wrap up. But honestly, Steve, I think people deserve this background information.
Okay.
So,
If you want, okay. I just want to be fair.
we lobbied for all of 2015, and we lobbied by the end of 2015. In January of 2016, the governor put in his budget transformative climate communities, $140 million, and a one-paragraph explanation taking language that Fresno provided him as to what that program might involve. Okay, so now it's in the governor's budget. So now the legislature does their job. They take that line, they take that paragraph, and they say, okay, if this is what the governor is aiming at, we are going to now write legislation on the community process required for administering those funds. And that is legislation we're now working through, AB 2722, 23. 2722. And the EJ community across the state was arguing for a similar type of approach with cap and trade funding, unbeknownst to the fact that we were working on the governor's office to get this program created. All right. If you go on the TCC website, or if you go on the SGC website, there is a document, a link that you want to read that answers your question. And it says, Statement of Reasons. You read that, you will know why Fresno was picked. And I'm going to tell you guys, yes, of course, it's about Southwest, and it's about downtown, and it's about Chinatown. It's about the fact that these three neighborhoods, not to mention the probably 24 other neighborhoods in and around this area that are equally as devastated and impacted, it is about all of these neighborhoods coming back, all right? If you ask the state, and we had the state down here multiple times, most recently Ken Alex was here 6 weeks ago, the state will not allow a proposal from the city of Fresno that is a Southwest-only project. They require that there be a project that brings all of these neighborhoods together, that there be the 5-mile radius from high-speed rail, right, as well as all three of these neighborhoods, Chinatown, downtown, and Southwest, okay? So with minimum high-speed rail requirements and subject to this community process. So as much as probably all of us here want this to be about, I just want it about downtown. Well, I just want it to be about Chinatown. Well, I just want it to be about Southwest. The reality is, it is about all of these neighborhoods. And we have to find a way to put a package together that reflects the state's requirements, period, or there will be no 70 million.
I know it's hard to be ex-mayor, but I'm going to take the mic back. Okay. So we've got Matt, and then Lee, and then Ivanka, and then we'll have time for individual discussion, so I want to respect everyone's time. So we got Matt. Oh, I maybe did turn off.
Okay, I just wanted a little more clarity on the displacement. I guess most specifically with the Southwest plan about to be adopted, does the displacement plan that we then vote on and come up with, can that nullify that, or how does that affect the Southwest plan that's about to be adopted?
So let's see, where did Laura go?
I'm sorry, anti-displacement.
Anti-displacement. So first, just to clarity is on the anti-displacement plan, and then your specific question is, how did it relate to what's in the specific plan? So I can, on that planning question, everything in TCC needs to be consistent with the specific plan. So no, the TCC proposal can't override the specific plan. Now, if you had a chance, Matt, to look at the chart that's in the guidelines about anti-displacement. So if everyone hasn't had a chance, check it out, because there's a very specific chart with a variety of possible strategies. Some of them are much broader than a specific plan, meaning they're suggesting possible alterations in citywide policy. Again, all to be discussed. So if those were eventually implemented, yes, they would supersede a specific plan, but they can't be actually implemented by this proposal. They can be proposed, right? So that, again, one of the important things is one thing is, do any of the particular projects displace, but the intent is displacement is much wider than just the lot. And you'll see the chart, I believe it's page 12, but definitely really worth checking out. It's the starting point for all the discussion on displacement that will take place at the meeting next week. And some of it is much broader than the specific plan. Yeah, I think, right, so TCC proposal underneath specific plan, the anti-displacement plan, more than subject to everyone's decision, is likely broader, but that's to be contemplated. And clearly, the plan is a plan. It's not, and some of the items on that checklist you see would require new law, and so that law doesn't get passed by being included in the plan, right? Lee, are you still there, Lee? Oh, Lee, you got a mic right there.
Thank you. It would be helpful if you could estimate the tangible benefits of each project. I'm thinking about long-term employment. I'm talking about number of residents who would benefit, number of students who would benefit, and as actually just spoke to the investment that might take place.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, you want to start with that? Oh, you don't have a mic anymore. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it would be great to do that now, and we don't have the time to do a lot of that in real time. We've done our best to give a few pieces of analytics that could help the decision-making process. So on the affordable housing piece, providing levels of affordability to understand who can benefit and at what income level. A lot of the projects are subject to the project labor agreement, except for the housing projects. So there will be local hire coming out of that. As we go forward in the grant writing process, there will be more projections about who's going, employment targets and that sort of thing, but we can't do it for every individual project at this point.
And I just mentioned that one of the positive challenges we have is we're together creating this proposal that is made up of pieces, projects proposed by many different entities. And there's going to be a need to hold all those entities, including the city, responsible to actually implement the projects and produce the results. And TCC anticipates that, because it's not just about projections, and I'm surely you're thinking the same, it's what do actually people produce. So if you get a chance, you go back to the guidelines, they're very clear about extensive reporting and monitoring to see if the results actually come. And a big part of the time between October 18th and November 30th, concept to final proposal, is making really clear what measurable results are being promised and how are they going to be monitored and reported, which speaks to your question. Can we follow up?
I guess the intuitive thought is you would not be hearing this criticism if the projects on the table were in fact compelling and likely to provide the benefits that people would recognize. So somehow we need to figure out how to articulate the benefits of these projects so people really get comfortable with where we're going.
Yep, well said, well said. So lastly, Ivanka, before we go to next steps. Ivanka's right behind you, honey.
I think the main thing I wanted to ask is, what do we expect next? Because every time we've come into these meetings, it's not what we expect. I really thought tonight it was going to be a chance for community members to come together and really clarify what we want to see, like Lee was just stating, versus it be given to us as if this is it and this is all you have to choose from. So my main question is, what are your plans next?
So I think a good segue to next steps. So most important, clarity on next step. The next meeting is just 2 days from now, 5 o'clock registration, 5:30 start at Westside Church of God, where the other steering committees have been. That meeting will be focused entirely on the process of coming to a 2/3 agreement over a package of proposals to recommend to the mayor. We'll start by considering these 4 alternatives with the hope that because they're based on the projects that got 2/3 support and the requirements and the local criteria, that one of them, in fact, will get two-thirds support. And again, to emphasize that, there's been a great deal of effort to make sure to follow those priorities. And I think we have actually been successful, but the test will be, in fact, when the voters all come together. So the focus of the meeting will be, remember, this isn't an official steering committee meeting, so please forgive us if at the beginning we need to re-present. We need to present again everything we presented tonight, because a lot of steering committee members aren't here. So we'll present this information. In a sense, you've got the preview. And then there'll be a discussion amongst everybody and a discussion just amongst the voters. Not asking anyone to leave the room, but the voters getting priority. And then the voters will vote to select a potential alternative. Also on next steps.
Can I just add more?
Okay, sure.
I just wanted to say one thing, Ivanka, to answer the purpose of tonight's meeting. No, I wasn't here last Wednesday, so I missed some of those discussions. But I'm actually really grateful that we had this extra meeting, because it allowed us to take this extra step of, we wanted to be transparent about the alternatives and to give folks time to let it sink in, to really absorb, to have more than an hour to think about what was going to be in front of them on Wednesday night. And so we rushed to create this so that you had the opportunity to really deliberate in a more true fashion than on Wednesday night. So that was our intent. I know it's messy, but we're trying to be transparent.
And I actually say, I appreciate your deference, but I don't think it is actually messy or a rush, in the sense that people just worked a lot this weekend. But there was an incredible amount of cross-checking and triple-checking. There was a meeting with city leadership. There was a meeting with state leadership. So these have all been fully vetted, and to make sure that what's brought on Wednesday, which will be these exact alternatives, are fully implementable, and have all the appropriate authorities have agreed to them, so that if they're chosen, no one higher up is going to then say no, other than if in the end proposers aren't actually doing what they say they're doing. So just let me, Denise, before I come back to you, so first next step is the meeting on Wednesday. The next step, which we'll have details on Wednesday, will be next week. There'll be a meeting or meetings regarding the additional policy portions of the proposal, most importantly, the anti-displacement plan, but also the community engagement plan, and I'm missing the third. Local hire, PLA. Yeah, PLA, so local hire, anti-displacement, and then the engagement.
These projects have already gone through state review, or you presented them as projects that you want to have presented to them?
We've actually put all the projects multiple times through state review to make sure that they were eligible first. And then we made sure that that the additional information, because last time they saw them, there was less information. Again, we want to make sure we're not including anything here that the state would then say, oh no, you can't include that because of the guidelines. So for example, do we have the subject to state? Yeah, okay, so the two that say subject to state confirmation is because when we showed them to the state and said, hey, this is one of the things that comes out of the process, they said, well, there may be a conflict in funding sources. We didn't take it out because those rose to the top in choice, but we put that note on it because today they told us that. And that's why we checked with them, to make sure we don't bring forth something based on the popular vote on Wednesday that then the state turns around and says, oh no, that's not TCC eligible. So we've carefully cross-checked it with them.
And when will the steering committee have the opportunity to amend these packages that you have already put together? Because some of the items that show up are not the items that the community would like to see. And so we would, as a community steering committee, we would like to be able to make amendments and modifications.
So if none of the four packages gets a two-thirds support, then we would go to a process of amending them to get two-thirds support. And that's, so, no. No, because the community did make up the packages, and to be clear, and again, I appreciate people are saying, but everyone should be real with each other. The projects, the first 11 projects up here are the projects that got 2/3 of the vote in all the groups. So people did very clearly say, the next group are those that are required, and then in one alternative, the balance are the ones that got the most votes, and the others, they follow the themes. Again, we will, on Wednesday night, if none of these 4 alternatives get 2/3 of the vote, then we'll work to amend it to the point to where we do, just as you do with legislation. And let me say, I think Danielle and I, who are first in charge of organizing the process, welcome to talk to anybody about anything they would like to do in adding to that or making sure it works best. But for the moment, we want to stop the information session. Danielle and I will stay up here and welcome anyone who's interested in process to come up to us more. But we want to then make sure there's time to review the maps and to talk together, because really at this point it's all about steering committee members talking to each other. We're not voting on Wednesday, people talking to each other and deciding how they want to vote.
I have a question for,
So,
last week when we met, my understanding was that we were here to discuss the project so that everybody had a clear understanding on what we would be voting on, and everybody understood exactly what each project entailed. That is not what I'm seeing here today. I'm seeing the same thing that happens at the TCC meetings, that we come in, like you said, these are the popular projects. And basically what I'm hearing here is that you gave us an hour, or whatever the time frame was. And the facilitators at each group, they're like this with the watches. Okay, you have 20 minutes, you have 15 minutes, you have 5 minutes. So that's why everybody starts putting their little sticky notes. We don't have time to discuss these projects and see exactly what they are. And then you put together packets as if, and you're telling us, oh, here's the packets that you have to vote on. We should know what packets we're voting on, what they entail, what each project is, so that we can make an informed decision. But what you're saying and what I'm hearing today, and I don't know about anybody else, but I'm hearing that you're saying we're incapable of making these decisions as to what projects we want to put together in the packets. We can do that. All you need to give us the information and give us the time to put the projects together. You have these meetings, people ask questions, you give us the answer that you want to tell us. You don't, I haven't heard any questions answered here tonight. You say what you want to say, and then when people start asking more questions for clarification, then you put the time limits. Okay, we're going to give you 2 more seconds. How is that? Everything that I've seen since I've been coming to these meetings has been rushed. There has been nothing, it's all smoke and mirrors that's being presented to us. You present what you want to present. It's for us to kind of feel our ways through what you're saying, and then we still don't get clarity because nothing is answered specifically.
we're going to close in a moment. We're staying to talk to folks. I honestly believe that having had a chance to work on dozens of processes like this across the state, I've never seen one that had this level of participation, that had this level of representative cross-section of people involved, that enabled people to consider not just the details of projects, but which projects they wanted, and honestly to see a mayor, a city council person, and a city council agree to allow the community to allocate almost $70 million. People often talk about participatory budgeting. It's usually around a couple $100,000 or $1 million. We're talking $70 million, and there's really been dramatic participation. Not perfect, but dramatic. And we just invite everyone to come back on Wednesday night and complete that process together. And Danielle and I will stay up here to discuss more if anyone wants to. Thank you very much.